All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland, and part of what we do is talk with webmasters and publishers like the ones here in the Hangout. As always, before we get started with the normal Q&A, if any of you who are kind of new to these Hangouts wants to ask a question before we get started, feel free to jump on in now.
I'd like to ask a question then. This is my first hangout,
All
and
right.
it's good that that you asked that, so that way I can make sure my question gets answered. So I mean, if I understand the format correctly, I could just ask the question that I would have asked anyways in the Q&A.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's regarding schema markup. I think it was before last week. It seemed that for flight comparison sites, you could still see the price-rich snippets for most of them. And then by the end of last week, I noticed that, yeah, for virtually all price flight comparison sites, this price markup was no longer showing. So the example type of page I'm talking about is, for example, like flights to Berlin. So Skyscanner, Kayak, TripAdvisor has flights, Expedia. The price markup was no longer showing. So the question is, yeah, did you guys just decide we don't want to show that anymore? Or did you update your guidelines and you decided it doesn't match anymore? Or is it because the Google Flights product should show that information?
I double checked about this just before the Hangout, actually, and we didn't actually change anything specific there. But what we did notice is that a bunch of sites were using this as a way to kind of mark up a variety of products instead of just one product. So we essentially hope that the price markup on a page is specific to one specific product. And if you're talking about a page like Flights to Berlin, then that's like tons of different products, essentially, like different flights from different locations going to Berlin. And it's really hard to say, well, it makes sense to mark that up with the price-rich snippets and to show that in the search results because it's essentially like all different kinds of products on the same page.
Okay.
So that's kind of what the team took action on there, and to kind of say, well, we noticed that these pages were marking up multiple different types of products in a way that you would for one product specifically. So that's, I think, from what I heard from the team, that's kind of what changed there. And it's not so much that it changed on our guidelines or anything. It's just that we noticed that this was a problem. Someone, I don't know, reported it, or somehow it got the word got to the rich snippets team, and they said, well, we have to take action here to make sure that this matches, or that what we show in the search results still complies with what we actually have in our guidelines.
Quick follow-up, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in that context, then, can we expect to see the same happen to, for example, hotels in Berlin? Because that was one of the things I wanted to check at first. I was like, this is probably, because I read in your guidelines, it should be a single product. We should still mark up all the products on the page. I understand that. It's just a rich snippet won't necessarily show. But right for now, for example, I guess hotels would be hit next, right? Because hotels in Berlin, if you look that up, you'll see this price rich snippet for sites like TripAdvisor.
I don't know. I mean, I can ask the team
Okay.
after the hangout to kind of check that out as well. In general, what's kind of tricky with a situation like this, if this is like one of your sites, is that sometimes we can't like fine-tune our setup to match just those specific pages. So what might happen is that the team says, okay, we can't figure out exactly which pages match this setup, so we'll remove rich snippets, or this type of rich snippets, from this site in general. So if this is kind of happening to your site, you probably get a notification about this through Search Console. And what I just try to do there is make sure that you can catch those patterns on your side and just not include the rich snippet markup for those kind of pages.
Okay, thank you.
John, just a quick question about Google Page Insights. Are you going to make it easy for developers, for instance, if it tells you, okay, remove this specific div, would I be able to tell you later on, like, remove this specific div from line, 17 because there's like, 30 divs, or, a very complex page, because it's so complex when you want to fix like the tap target or whatever, because it's so close on mobile, but it looks really fine on desktop. But once there's separation, and it doesn't look as good. But I mean, on mobile it's fine. But then how do we know what to do? Like,
yeah. So what I do there usually is try to figure that out in Chrome directly, using the Chrome mobile emulator, and kind of going back from there. Because I guess the tricky part is with a lot of these pages, when you're using JavaScript, then it's really hard to pinpoint a specific line in the original HTML file, because that could be injected by JavaScript, or that could be impacted by JavaScript otherwise on the page. So that's sometimes really hard to kind of fold back to a specific line on those pages. And with Chrome, with the mobile emulator, with the developer tools there, it's a little bit easier to say, okay, this specific div, where does that come from on my code, and to try to figure out what you need to change.
Okay. So just to inspect the element and then go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. More questions from anyone who's kind of new to these Hangouts?
I'm not really new, but can I ask you one, John?
Sure.
I have a question regarding Google Web Lite. We've seen that certain sites, when they get Google Web Lite, basically lose functionality, get huge bounce, huge exit rates. Is this taken in with the rest of the signals that Google sees, or seen separately just for Google Web Lite? If just a 30% bounce on a normal and then a 90% on Google Web Lite because you can't submit the form, so the page is useless.
Oh man, that sounds bad. I mean, it's not something that we should fix regardless of what happens with any of the data there. So I think in our Help Center we have an email address for WebLite. I definitely send those there. And if you want, you can also send it to me directly, and I can pass that on to the WebLite team. I know this is the type of issue that they're looking at to kind of solve a little bit better. So I wouldn't worry so much on how that kind of user data is used later on in search, but more on, like, I don't know, avoiding people running into this type of situation where they're not able to use your website properly. All right. Let me jump through the questions that were submitted. The Q&A widget works, so we have that going for us. If you have any comments along the way, feel free to jump on in. Otherwise, we'll open up questions again towards the end. We've done a lot of work on deeper pages within our website and have some SEO benefit, but neglected the homepage. Can deep links from the homepage to our newly optimized inner pages help improve the SEO further? Or any other tips for improving the homepage? So in general, for a lot of sites, the homepage is probably the point of the site where everything comes together. So that's something that we tend to see as, I guess, the more central place of a website. So we'll try to recrawl it more frequently. We'll try to figure out what's actually happening on that page, where we should show it. So if you add content to your website, then linking it to it from the homepage is probably a good idea. And that's something that kind of naturally happens anyway, where a lot of sites will have a section on the homepage, like with the news and new articles, for example, new products, and link to those specifically directly from the homepage. And that's something we can pick up, and that's something that we can use to kind of drive a little bit more attention to those new pages as well. So linking to new and updated content from the homepage is definitely a good idea. With regards to other tips for improving the homepage, one thing that we see quite a lot is that people will have a homepage that is kind of hard to understand what it is that this website is actually offering. So my recommendation there would be to kind of take your homepage and bring it to someone who's not directly associated with your company and kind of ask them what special thing is this company offering that this homepage should be used for, and to kind of figure out, do you have all of the relevant information on the homepage? Do you provide it in a way that's easy to understand to users? And indirectly from there, is that something that search engines could pick up on? Are like the right keywords on this homepage that search engines understand that this is a local bakery, not that this is a local company that has some fancy name that we don't really understand is actually a bakery, because they're using all of these kind of more fancy terms than kind of being down to earth and just saying what they're actually doing. So that's something that I definitely recommend for, at least for a lot of smaller business homepages, to kind of make sure that you're actually giving the information on your homepage about what it is that you provide and what kind of differentiates you from all of the rest of the competition.
John, can I have a follow-up on that regarding
Sure.
Internal linking from the homepage? Does this basically boil down to how PageRank flows? Because the homepage usually has the highest page rank, so it's normal that it would give a bigger flow, I guess, to the internal pages linked directly from the.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, it comes down to something like that, where on a lot of sites, the homepage is the page that has the most page rank, the most signals that kind of combine and come together. And if you can forward some of that to your new pages, then that really helps them to kind of pick up and kind of get jump-started rather than having to be randomly discovered when Googlebot crawls through the depth of the website.
But what about like boilerplate sections of the site, like the main menu? So, for example, I don't know, the company builds a new product or adds a new product to their portfolio. So, is it a good idea to also link it from somewhere that's site-wide, like the menu or something like that? Does that add any extra, I don't know, page rank flow towards that internal page? Or do you just not really, I don't know, maybe ignore a bit the boilerplate sections of the website when it comes to how the signals go?
We do probably pick up on that a little bit, but I wouldn't see that as like a primary important thing that you'd have to do. So some of that we can pick up on and say, well, this is across the whole website. It's probably more important. But sometimes things that are linked across the website are less important. Maybe it's like the Contact Us page, where we say, well, it's linked from everywhere, but it doesn't mean that it's the most important page on the website. So I definitely aim to have things more from the home page or the higher level category pages, at least the new content linked. And if it makes sense to also include it in the menu in like a generic sidebar across the whole site, then sure. But I wouldn't see that as something that's critical.
So basically, internal linking is more important when it's done from, I don't know, places that aren't necessarily site-wide. So for example, if I add this new product, which has a new page, it would also be a good idea maybe to do some interlinking from some of my other articles, for example, or some sort like that.
Sure, you could do that, sure. I mean, that's something that kind of naturally happens with a website when it grows. So if you think that makes sense, I definitely go for that. It's always more helpful for us when we understand the context of a page better, which means when we understand like where within the whole website does this fit in. Does it belong to this category or this type of page? And the cross links that you provide from that page to other pages and from other pages back to that page, they give us a lot of information.
Okay, thanks.
In many cases, my mobile rankings are not as good as my desktop rankings, even though I pass with flying colors the Google Mobile Friendly test. My site is mobile responsive. What's going on? It's hard to say what's going on there without actually looking at the site. So this is something where I probably post in the Webmaster Help forums or in other Webmaster forums to get some advice from other people on what might be happening in your specific case. So in general, we do use the desktop rankings as a basis for the mobile rankings, and on top of that, we use the mobile-friendly information to figure out which sites are mobile-friendly and which sites are less mobile-friendly. but it's unlikely that you'll see any big jumps either up or down with regards to a website. So it's not that you're going to go from page 3 to page 1 just because you have a mobile-friendly website, but similarly, you shouldn't go from page 3 to page, I don't know, 20 just because you don't have a mobile-friendly website. So that's something where probably you'd need to look into the specifics of what's actually happening there.
Hey, John, somewhat related to that, somewhat recently in Webmaster Tools, when you go to the Fetches Google, they added the ability where you can select desktop, mobile, and mobile future versions, whatever they are in there. If you're creating a new page and you just want to be crawled, is it necessary to fetch and submit under all those different categories?
No. So if you submit your URLs normally within, like, let's see, where did I start? If we can crawl your website normally and we recognize those new links, for example, on the homepage, as with the previous question, then we'll pick that up fairly quickly, probably within a couple of hours or something like that. If it's lower on your website and we haven't actually crawled to it, then you can use something like the sitemaps to submit new URLs. That helps us. Or you can use a submit to indexing feature in Search Console. And if you use the feature in Search Console, we just need to have that from one of those different types. So you don't need to go through those different types and say, oh, this is also the mobile version and also the other mobile version and all of that. So essentially, when you submit it once, then we'll pick it up for indexing, and from indexing, we'll figure out which mobile version we also need to crawl it at and index it appropriately.
Okay, and also with regard to the mobile, is the test basically mobile-friendly or not mobile-friendly, or is there any in-between in there?
At the moment, it's basically yes or no. So it's not that there are different shades of mobile friendliness. Either you pass the test, you get the label, or you don't pass the test.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Here's, I guess, a different question. What about a valid and allowed HTML code free from errors? Is it a signal which Googlebot uses to determine a good website? So I think the question is whether valid HTML code is something that we use for rankings, and the answer is essentially no. So we don't look at the validity of the HTML code that's on a page when it comes to rankings. So it's not that your website will rank better if you fix those individual HTML errors. Part of that is just because there are just so many broken websites out there, and we still need to rank them somehow. And to a large extent, they still work in browsers anyway. There's one kind of carve-out there that I'd like to make, is that if you're using structured data on a website, then not having valid HTML makes it a little bit harder for us to figure out which of these blocks are actually marked up appropriately. So that's something where I think from a diagnostics point of view, it makes sense to also validate your code so that you really mark it up properly. And there's another carve out a little bit for like really extremely broken HTML code where maybe we can't pick up that it's actually HTML code and index it like a text file, or we can't pick up which links you have on those pages, where we can't actually figure out this is a good web page to actually show in the normal web search results. But that's something that I think I've only seen a handful of times at my time here at Google, so that's really, really extreme, and that's something that you'll probably also see in a browser where you try to open the page in a browser and it just doesn't work as it should. So with regards to a few HTML errors, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're using structured data markup, I'd, at least for the pages that you're checking, make sure that they're also valid HTML so that you know the markup is actually done properly.
Of course, if you're using JSON-LD, then that doesn't matter.
That makes it possible, yeah. But I think it's still, at least for the page, for the templates that you're trying to set up, I definitely think it makes sense to have valid HTML there so that you really know that things are being picked up as they should be. With JSON-LD, you can kind of bypass that a little bit and say, well, this is the markup for the page, and here is all the HTML. But you really want to make sure that actually this markup is being picked up properly. Aggregate ratings, rich snippet markup, clarity. Is it considered spam if you mark up a page which doesn't have reviews, but it links to the score from a third-party review provider, but markup aggregate ratings as if those reviews belong to them? So this is something I'm still checking out with the rich snippets team. I believe from what I've seen in the past that this is fine, because this is essentially a link to those ratings, and even though it's not directly on your website but on a third-party site, then those ratings are still there and they're still visible for you to kind of look at. But I'm clarifying that with the rich snippets team to make sure that I give you an answer that you can rely on.
John, there are certain extensions for some CMSs that allow you to display some of these reviews, I think from Yelp, if I'm not mistaken, directly on your website. Marking them up with structured data is fine in that case?
I believe so, but I need to double check with the rich snippets team on that. Sometimes some of these things change over time, and there might be some subtle things to kind of watch out for. So I don't want to say definitely yes or definitely no, but I'll certainly check up on that with the team too. You said, whoops, clicked the wrong button. I think the question was, like, you said there were 200 ranking signals. How many of those are on page or off page? In general, that's really hard to kind of clarify because we look at different things in different situations. So with the large number of ranking signals that we use, it's really helpful for us to say, well, for this specific result, we're looking at this part of the page or this part of the signals, and for other results, we're looking at other signals, and we try to balance those and show those in rankings appropriately. So it's really not possible to say, well, you need to get 50% of the on-page things right and 25% of these right, and then you'll be ranking, because we essentially mix all of those signals together and try to figure out overall which of these results are most relevant. So sometimes you'll see that in that really new results are visible in the search results ranking competitively, because we think, well, maybe this is something that's really new and upcoming, and we need to show that above sites that are maybe older. So that's the kind of thing that can happen, but over time it can happen again that we turn that around and say, well, actually these new pages didn't really provide that much additional value. We're looking at the older content again. So it's not that there's a clear split between like different ranking factors.
So these 200, you combine them into one? Like, is it a one overall? I mean, do you use all the 200?
I mean, we have to combine them somehow to get like the 1 through 10 search results. So
yeah, it's the one algo that has just 200, like it's under one umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, we look at lots of different signals and we try to combine them as appropriate for the individual search results pages. And sometimes things like personalization can flow in there as well. So it's really hard to say which of these are actually the right 200 to focus on or the right signals to focus on, because that really changes over time, and it depends on the query, it depends on the time, it depends on the other sites that are active there. There's no one answer that solves this kind of equation, but in the end we do try to come up with a listing of essentially 1 through 10 or 1 through 1,000 of all of those pages that are shown in the search results, so that we can give you a listing rather than just an array of pages and say, oh, these are all pretty good. We don't want to be partial and pick any one.
Right.
People want some kind of a ranking there. You answered the question about doing mini-site audits. So when are you going to do one? I actually just scheduled one earlier today. So I think it's towards end of May. And there's a form there. You can submit your site, and we'll take the submissions and get in touch with those that we'd like to look at for the site clinic and send you all invites when we get closer. So definitely look out for that, and either submit your site or a site that you're working on, or encourage other people with, especially small businesses we're looking at there, who have a website, to maybe submit their site so that they can get some feedback from us.
Does that include me?
Sure.
Oh.
Let's say my site has been touching different topics at once, and I decided to focus on one topic, for example, doctor pages, but before I had pages about diseases and hospitals. How would Google see this change? In my opinion, it's an improvement, but what would Google see? So that is kind of a normal change on a website. The themes of a website change over time. That's not something that I'd say you need to kind of shy away from, or like create separate sites if you want to touch on a new topic. So that's something I'd see that as kind of a normal organic change of a website, where maybe you expand a little bit in some areas, you kind of contract a little bit in other areas, focus more here, kind of go a bit broader here. That's totally natural. That's not something I'd kind of shy away from. I guess the normal advice on like growing a site is something that you might want to look at is how people react to your content. Do they still understand what your pages are about? Can they understand like which things belong together? Those kind of more general marketing, user experience type questions, I guess. Does coding the breadcrumb as an H1 instead of the more visible heading negatively affect rankings of a page for the keyword in the H1? So usually the H1 is the most visible heading on a page, so it would be kind of weird to say the H1 is less visible than a normal breadcrumb. But in general, you can do this if you think it makes sense. If this is like the main heading of your page, I wouldn't necessarily see an H1 heading as being kind of a magic way to rank #1 for those keywords in there. So I try to set up a page in a way that semantically kind of makes sense, where you have headings, maybe you even have multiple H1 headings if you think that works for your page. Maybe you have subheadings, maybe you don't. And maybe this kind of changes across your website, where some types of content has headings and other types doesn't use headings so much.
John, is it the case that you'd rather look at maybe font size instead of HTML element itself? Google is pretty good at rendering the page.
Yeah, I mean, we do render the page to try to figure out what's actually relevant on the page, but we also look at the semantic kind of structure of a page. So I wouldn't say you only need to do the font size, but if you really can provide a clear heading, then I'd really go for an H1 heading. We're tidying up our link profile. Does inbound links from other countries count against you, or are treated less important than links from your own country? Or is it only the relevancy of a website that the link comes from which matters in SEO? So in general, links from other countries are fine. It's not something that you need to suppress or kind of remove or put in a disavow file. Sometimes you even get links from other languages where you don't even know what they're really writing about with regards to your website, and that can also be fine. So that's not something I'd say you need to artificially prune or kind of fine-tune there. The way the links come to your website is essentially out of your control for a large extent.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with like Thailand links and Chinese links and other links without prejudice, like criticism and so on?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes those are completely natural links, and sometimes you get spammy links from the U.S. So it's kind of I guess the way the web is. So just because it's from a different country isn't something I see as being problematic.
So if it was your site, you would just leave it alone?
Yeah.
Okay.
John, I have a somewhat related question. It's not that related, but I'm going to go with it anyway. if you had a UK domain and you put a subdomain on it, so something.co.uk, but you created a subdomain on there, could you go into Webmaster Tools and target that as somewhere other than the UK? Or would the main domain take over that?
Yeah, the main domain would take over that. So if it's on a country code top-level domain, then we would use that for geo-targeting. The exception there is some country code top-level domains we treat as generic top-level domains.
Right.
We have those listed, I think, in the Help Center. Those are things like .tv, which is some island in the Pacific, but actually most of the sites on there are using it to say, well, this is a TV show, and using it as a generic domain.
Right. Okay.
What's better for local ranking? Citations from established directories or ones from small sites, which may be less trusted by Google as these sites are less known? Do citations from specialist directories in your industry help? I don't actually know how the local search results are put together, so I can't really help in this regard. I know there's some websites out there that focus on local search specifically, so I'd go there and check out what they have there. I don't actually know how we handle this on our side. We have dozen duplicate title and page errors because of comment plugin with Ajax. For example, escaped fragment equals load more, parent equals whatever. The plugin has been deleted and 301s are in place, but Webmaster Tools error messages are still there. It's now about 6 months. I wouldn't really worry about that. So specifically around the duplicate title, HTML suggestions we have there, these are things where if we haven't recrawled and re-indexed them, then they'll probably remain there for a while. And if these are URLs that were kind of randomly discovered when we crawled the site at one time, and we haven't looked at those since then that's probably something that's going to take a while for us to actually try to recrawl and re-index and figure out, oh, these are actually gone now, and we don't really have to worry about them anymore. So that's something, on the one hand, you can just leave that there and just say, well, I know about this, I cleaned it up, I'm going to ignore it. Another thing you could do if you had a list of these URLs, you could submit them as a sitemap file and say, these URLs have all changed recently with a new last modification date, and we'll take that last modification date and say, oh, well, we'll try to recrawl these URLs to see what you changed there. And based on that, we'll probably recrawl them a little bit faster and try to re-index them a little bit faster with that redirect in place, meaning they'll actually drop out. So that could help for period of time. I wouldn't leave that sitemap file in place forever. I'd maybe remove it after half a year because it's really pointing at URLs that you don't really want to care about anymore. We're competing with another affiliate site, but you seem to favor their site, even though experts say our site is better. We're offering a lot of value, and so far Google doesn't favor us. What's up with that? It's hard to say. I mean, there are lots of sites out there on the same topic, and we have to take our algorithms and pick one of these and show them in the search results on top, and we rank them appropriately. So there's no single recipe to number one rankings that I can really give there. What I'd recommend doing is going to some of the help forums out there where other webmasters are active and getting their feedback on your website on what you've been doing so far. Sometimes that can be really eye-opening in that maybe they'll point things out that you don't really want to know or that you know are problematic but you've been kind of pushing to the back. But a lot of times those are things that you could actually focus on and use those to kind of get a little bit of a step up compared to the other sites.
Hello, I've got a question about negative SEO.
Sure.
Can I ask
Go
about
for
that?
it.
So
Go for it.
I've had this affiliate site for about 5 months, and in the last month, I've gotten, like, over the last 5 months, I've gotten, you know, a dozen or so backlinks. All white hat, all good. But in the last month, I've gotten like 35,000 backlinks from porn anchor text, from all these crazy spam blog comment domains and just really bad stuff. And I've used the disavow tool. I've gone into Webmasters and I've found all the domains. I've just disavowed pretty much all the domains at the domain level that are linking to me. Since my site is so new and it has like a low level of, like I was reading about it, they say that you want to have a good links. I don't have that many good links. I just have a lot of bad links now. So how worried should I be about getting penalized?
If you put them in the disavow tool, then you should be okay. I wouldn't really worry about that. What will happen with the disavow tool is we'll take those links out of our link graph, and even from a manual point of view, they wouldn't be taken into account. So even if someone from the web spam team were to look at that, they'd see, well, you have these normal links that are not disavowed, and this batch of links that is disavowed, and that should essentially work. So what I would just do in a disavow tool is make sure you're using it on a domain level so that you don't have to go through all of these URLs individually. You can just say, oh, everything from these 10 domains is something I definitely just want to have ignored completely.
Yeah, what if they keep on building these links for like a year and I end up with like 1 million negative SEO backlinks? To what extent does the disavow tool work? Does it just work indefinitely? Is it like a magic tool that just destroys all these links?
I guess it tries. There's a limit, I believe, to how large the disavow file can be. I'm not sure where that would be, but if you're doing this on a domain level, then you can pretty much keep up a lot faster. I wouldn't worry too much about these links because a lot of times these negative SEO campaigns will be done from the same kind of sites, and our systems are well used to those sites doing those kind of link things. So that's not something where I'd say you need to be on top of this every day. But if you know that this is happening, maybe every couple of weeks, look into your links and say, oh, all of these domains are bad. I'll just put them in, update them in my disavow file. So it's not something where I focus too much time on, but at the same time, if you know that this kind of stuff is happening with your site, then just
so I can have some faith in the disavow tool, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thank you.
John, is that a natural pattern though to get spam links immediately? Because I know whenever we register a new domain, we get people are monitoring these domain lists, and as soon as we register a new one, we'll get dozens of crappy emails from people saying we'll build your website or whatever they'll do. So presumably spammers are on top of this as well. So Google must see a spike in an initial so it must be perfectly natural.
Yeah, I mean, perfectly natural in a world where spammers are very active, I'd say. So that's something we definitely see a lot of this, and our systems are pretty used to a lot of this kind of spammy activity, and sometimes it's just completely automated anyway. So it's not something where I'd say you kind of need to be paranoid and always on top of things to make sure that you catch that one bad link that comes. Our systems generally take care of this fairly well, and for a large part, people should be able to do fine in the search results, even with new sites, when they get attacked by like this. So I think the disavow
tool... You must see the same 5,000 links going to every new site that starts.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think the value of the disavow tool is also just that you as a webmaster know that you don't have to rely on Google recognizing this. You can say, well, I think that this is a bad link as well, and I don't want Google to even have to think about whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah, okay.
John, if I may?
Sure.
So kind of going a different direction, back to markup on flights pages. Before I mentioned the example, marking up a page like Flights to Berlin, I just wanted to ask you, so you said Flights to Berlin wouldn't work before necessarily because it's kind of like multiple products, if I understood correctly. I just want to ask you, like, what do you think about if you were to mark up the individual flights on such a page? So, for example, you had the flight, the airline provider, and the flight number, which you would mark up as a product, and then mark up the prices for those individual flights. Is that something that would work?
I believe that should work. That'd be kind of like a category page, right? So from that point of view, I think that would work as long as you're not saying the aggregated kind of flight to Berlin type thing is also marked up. So if you have the individual products marked up, then that should work as far as I know.
Okay, and another quick question as well on that. For flights, what do you think about marking flights up as events? Or does that go against how you see markup being used?
So kind of like saying on this date at this time this flight is taking place.
Yeah.
I imagine the Rich Snippets team wouldn't be too happy with that because they're really trying to use I mean they're really trying to use these events as a way of recognizing what's happening in this one place, and flights to Berlin taking place in an airport in, I don't know, Heathrow. I don't think that's really what they're looking for. So I don't know the specific guidelines with regards to events there, but I think that would be kind of more problematic. Okay. What I would do with these type of questions is also post them in the Webmaster Help Forum. There's a section for rich snippets or structured data, and the folks that are active there are really on top of things there, and they can escalate specific threads to us as well. So if you have kind of examples where you have something either on your site or see it on another person's site, then that's definitely useful to kind of post there as well. And usually the value there is also that when they do get escalated, we respond or we go back to the people who escalate the issues with a more absolute answer than I can give like off the cuff here in the Hangout.
All right, thanks.
I have a quick question regarding like the escalation.
Sure.
Specifically. So there's a site that recently created basically a thin page of ads. And they created the page URL containing our exact domain name. I know that's nothing new, except in this case now this page of ads is literally started appearing on the first page of Google. So regarding the escalation, I know there's like I'm curious of the best way to handle some web spam like that, because now at this point our customers are clicking on it and just getting inundated with ads. So I know that there's the web spam complaint forum, but that's a little bit sort of black box. I know there's the Webmaster Forum you just mentioned, but a challenge there is I don't want to draw more attention to it. Do you know what I mean? So if you were a small business and you had some kind of turd competitor out there that literally just puts your exact domain in a page and then slaps ads on it, it's now on the first page of Google, what would you do?
I probably still recommend the Webmaster Help Forum. So there are things you can do there to kind of draw a little bit less attention to your thread, which could be like using a URL shortener. So it's not that the URL of the other site is directly visible in the search results in the forum. Other things you can do is maybe like include a screenshot rather than just writing out the text of the page that you're seeing or the search results that you're seeing as being problematic. And usually what happens there is the top contributors, the rising stars, the more active people in the forums, they'll take these threads, and if they can't figure it out on their own, they'll escalate it to us, and someone on Google's side will get back to them and say, oh, they have to do this, this, or this, or maybe we'll go to the thread directly and say, oh, you need to do kind of this, or maybe we'll just take that escalation and say, okay, we'll fix this on our side manually with the manual web spam team to kind of make sure that this problem is solved.
Got it. So that's what you do.
Yeah.
Okay, good answer. Thank you.
All right, let me run through some more of these questions that were submitted, and then we can open up for more general Q&A again. Why not let us know about doorway pages in Search Console, kind of like soft 404s? We do flag doorway pages when they're flagged by the manual web spam team, so you'll see that in the manual actions section in Search Console. We're adding new content to the site, adding pages to XML sitemap, submitting to Fetch's Google. What else can be done to increase visibility? Essentially, as soon as you submit that to us and we pick it up for indexing, then that's enough for us to actually pick up that page and index it. Everything past there is really kind of the normal SEO type things that you can do in making content really useful for users, kind of linking things properly within your website.
Hey, John, related to adding new content, if you're working on a brand new page and eventually it's going to get really big with a ton of information, is it better to wait until you have everything done before you release it, or is it okay to start with a subset of what's going to be on there and then add to it over time?
From a search point of view, you can do it either way. I think it's almost more of a marketing question in that if you provide just a sample of your pages, are you kind of like turning people away who are interested in more details, or does it make sense to actually wait until you have everything completely ready and then roll it out? So from a search point of view, it's fine to take a simplified website and refine that over time, just as it would be to take a really well-done website and put that out there once.
Okay, thanks.
We're submitting a sitemap, but it's taking a very long time to index it. We have over 100 lesson pages, and we're getting roughly 1 per day on average. Is this the expected pace, or can we do something to speed this up? So if you have something over 100 pages, then that's something we should be able to pick up fairly quickly, I guess within a day or so. So if you're seeing this as something that's happening very, very slowly, my guess is what's happening there is we're not able to crawl your website that quickly. And usually that's a matter of your website maybe being hosted on a server that we see as being kind of slow, or we can't actually fetch as many pages as we'd like to. So that's one thing I'd look at there, and usually that's something you'd notice when you use a website as well, where you try to access pages and it just takes forever to actually load those pages. So that's something that I kind of look at there, like, is the server physically really able to serve this content so quickly that we can pick it up? The other thing that might be happening there in a similar way is that maybe there are some technical errors on those pages, and we're actually crawling them, but we can't index them because maybe they have a no index, or maybe the server is showing errors, or maybe the pages need to do something fancy to actually show all of the content. And those are also things that you could double check through Search Console using the fetch and render tool there to kind of see, is Google able to see my pages the way that I would see them in the browser? So those would be the two things I'd look at. Yeah.
I actually had a similar situation with a client that made the move to HTTPS, but the platform they were on kept the rel canonical tags to the HTTP version. So in Search Console, in the HTTPS property, we always saw a very low number of index pages for the sitemap, which was very odd, and we finally found the canonical tag, reversed it, and now the index is
Yeah. If you're looking at the index count in Search Console, then that's something you definitely see there. If you're looking at the wrong version, the non-canonical version, then it would look like nothing is indexed or nothing is ranking. So that's always something good to watch out for. Good point.
John, if the same thing's happening, we have an issue where our videos are not being indexed. Within Webmaster Tools, it's seeing 52 of them being submitted. It sees that, but it's not indexing any. They're all Wistia rather than YouTube, so I don't. It's been a couple of months. Does that seem like there's an issue?
So the videos are on YouTube?
No, Wistia.
Okay. I don't
so
know.
they are ours. They're all original content.
Yeah, and they're actually indexed, just not shown as being indexed, or they're not indexed at all?
They're submitted in the sitemap, and it's showing us 52 videos submitted, but none indexed at all.
Okay.
And that's been since the start of April. So it's slowly been rising, the number of submitted, but 0, 0, 0 all the way, apart from some point in April, mid-April, 3 of them were indexed, but now they've all been dropped.
Okay. I don't know. I'd probably have to take a look at them. What might be happening there is that we're just not counting that properly in Search Console there, because maybe we're indexing the videos under slightly different URLs. But that's something where we probably need to look at the exact URL.
But they managed to redeem one of them.
All right. Okay.
And then this one got £10 on one.
Let me just see what kind of questions we have left here. Do single-page applications like a shop built in Ember or Angular have negative effects on crawling, indexing, and ranking? Are server-side generated HTML sites preferred over JavaScript-only applications for SEO? So I see a lot of really big sites and good sites move to kind of this new JavaScript framework setup, and to a large extent they're able to do that really well. But it's something that definitely makes things a little bit harder to kind of diagnose what's actually happening there. So I wouldn't say that this is something you should hold back on completely, but just keep in mind that you're kind of taking the higher difficulty level rather than doing something that's a lot easier to, on the one hand, to diagnose if anything is happening and to kind of double check that the right things are happening, because when we look at crawling, we don't have to, kind of like with normal HTML pages, we can just look at the HTML pages directly and know that they're actually crawled. With JavaScript pages, we have to actually render them first, and then we can pick that up for indexing. So it's definitely a little bit more complicated, but it's not impossible. It's not something completely black magic. It's just you kind of have to keep in mind that you'll probably spend a little bit more time on double-checking that things are working out well and double-checking or diagnosing any issues that you run across. And some of these frameworks are really well done, and they really provide a lot of value for users, so it's not that I discourage using them. I think there's a lot of value with going with something more modern. On a site, we have a page listing of lessons, but for some reason the links on this page are not at all crawled. No errors are reported. Would you be able to help us understand why? So that's something I'd almost point at the Webmaster Help forums for something like that, where other people can also take a look at the specific case. In general, if these are normal HTML pages with normal HTML links to other pages, then that shouldn't be a problem at all. I can imagine various kind of configurations where maybe you have no follow on those links, or maybe those individual lesson pages can't be crawled because they're blocked by blocked by robots text, or blocked for other reasons. So that's something where I probably get some tips from other people, from peers who have worked on websites before. I'd like to know whether SSL delivers the same ranking improvements as TLS when you move to HTTPS. So I think this is a bit of a nomenclature confusion in that TLS is actually the newer form of SSL, so it's not that you would ever get a certificate with SSL at the moment. If you have a normal modern HTTPS setup, then your certificate will automatically use TLS. So they're not really different things, they're just different ways of doing the same thing. All right, we have 5 minutes left, so let me just open it up for questions from you all.
So Gary said that this is actually maybe the last time I'll touch on the Hangout regarding that penguin, but he said it's not going to come back again. So can you just let us know, is that the case? I mean,
what? I don't know what Gary said there, but I do know the team is working on this, so it's not that penguin has disappeared.
It's going to happen this year. You'll get it out of the way, and we all move on, and we can focus on making sites.
You should all, yeah. We should all be doing that. Yeah, I don't know what the current plans are there. I haven't checked with the team since I got back.
Hey John, what would you recommend if you find a site? Not necessarily. It's not even a direct competitor of ours. It's in the vehicle history report space, we found a site that's ranking very well, that's competing with like the big players in that industry. Only when you actually go and try to use their page, what they're offering is really like complete garbage spam almost. But you can't really tell that until you get like way into their website, and in some cases people even making a purchase by that point. Is there any process to kind of point people at Google to take a look at something like that? Because it's not even directly affecting our site in particular, but it's just a very bad thing for users to find.
Hard to say. I mean, you can use the feedback link on the bottom of the search results. That sometimes helps. You can send the URLs to me or one of us in general, so we can take a look to see if there's anything that needs to be done from search quality or from a web spam point of view. But it sounds like something where the website is almost technically okay, but it's just like the final product is kind of low quality or bad. And I don't know if that's something that we'd really be able to kind of take action on. It's like making that judgment call of like what you get delivered when you order something is really kind of outside of our scope.
Okay. And is that the key to the algorithm behind you on the wall?
It's yeah. I picked the wrong room. I should have picked one that didn't have like all of the secret sauce written on it.
I can see everything. The door's open. So.
Yeah, I hope it's not too visible. I'm sure people will be like zooming in afterwards. All right, more questions from you guys.
Hi, John. I asked the question before, but it was just we get quite a high proportion of organic traffic from other countries, and we don't really serve those countries. Now, obviously, in Search Console, there are some mechanisms to kind of help guide Google on that, but our top-level domain is .co.uk, so we can't really affect that stuff very much. So the question really is there anything that we can do to help Google better understand what countries to kind of serve our content up in that's going to help them? It's not really of a great benefit to a user to come onto, say, an e-commerce site that doesn't actually sell to those countries.
Not really. So if you have one website, then you can't do things like hreflang because you just have like one version of the site. Mm-hmm. And if it's already on a co.uk, that means that geo-targeting is already set. So that's not really something that you can kind of guide Google to say, I don't want any of these people on my website.
Right. I mean, okay. Then I guess there's a natural follow-up, which is that can having that high proportion of geo-mismatched traffic, can that cause any negative effect for the site, or is it just kind of additional traffic that you don't really need to worry about?
It shouldn't cause any issues. So that's, I'd kind of ignore it. I mean, how you handle it in the end is kind of up to you.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, so I need to head out now. Thank you all for joining in so far. It's been great having you all here, and I set up a whole bunch of Hangouts for the next couple of sessions, so maybe we'll see some of you there. I wish you guys a great evening, and see you then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.